Hello.
Hello. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was wonderful. Thank you. How was yours?
It was great. It was, I do this thing called the double stuffed turkey,
Oh,
and it is always amazing.
that sounds fantastic.
Well, yeah.
Today we have Meeks Johnson with us, who is the designer of Proudfoot sock. And we are on the third part of our Proudfoot sock. We are going to be doing the point of the heel and then the gusset. And then the rest of the sock is just in the round again. So
did you say gusset? We
well,
already did the gussets. We're doing
not the
the
gusset,
heel flap.
the heel flap.
We'll do the heel turn.
The heel turn. Sorry.
And the heel flap.
I was at work early this morning and it's been a long weekend.
Oh my goodness. We got a new kitten.
Oh,
it is wonderful, but she has kept me all up all night, like 3 nights in a row. I'm so tired.
That's so fun. Okay. So you're going to be showing us the trapping, I think, of the stitches.
And yes, we're gonna start. We just want to orient ourselves on the pattern, which I have right here. So you want to have finished page 7 completely, which is all of your increases inside of the hex. And then after that, when you're in sync with the right number of stitches that you want in your hex, you want to knit one more set of rounds. So one more knit all round without increases and one more slip stitch round, just to settle that all in so that it's a smoother curve. So we do that. That's I think this little purple one right here. I'll show you on the drop cam in a minute.
Okay.
Okay. So we want to do that. And then we're going to start. Oh, should I talk about the high instep mod? Yes.
Yes.
So if you're not doing it, if you're not doing the high instep mod, you'll finish your increases and you'll do one more knit all round and one more slip stitch round before you start page 8, which is pointing the heel. If you are doing the high instep mod, you need to work hex rounds 7 and 8 twice more to give back the 1/4 inch that we stole when we started the instep mod a 1/4 inch early, right? To keep our math right, we have to give back that 1/4 inch. So we knit a couple more hex rounds 7 and 8 to just lengthen that there, and that gives us a little more room in the instep because the volume of a cone is much more at the top of the cone than it is at the tip of the cone.
Gotcha. So
then we're going to start page 8. So page 8 starts with a setup round, and I'm just going to show you, I'm going to orient you on the drop count to where we are.
Sounds great.
You know,
pulling out my pattern so I can follow along at home.
Sure. That's good. So you can so here's my sock. This is the top of it. You can see that everything is in. I've just finished a slip stitch row. So the stitches that are on the needle are alternating between 2 different colors. And then on the bottom, here's my hex. Here's my stitch marker right here and right here. And I have the right number of stitches inside the hex. And then I've knit. This last round has been with no increases. And both of my working yarns are here at beginning of round. So the first thing I'm going to do to set up is I need to get to here,
Mhm.
this marker here on the left. So I'm just gonna rearrange my needle and slip all of these stitches that we call wing stitches from this needle onto this needle. So I'm just gonna do that.
And we're going to be knitting with a different color of yarn
Yes.
as we
This-
start the heel. So one of the things I found was that I tucked my working yarns from the foot inside,
Ah,
get them out of my way so that while I worked on my heel, I wouldn't have. So it kind of depends on how big your skein is, but I was working with little mini skeins and I was able to
that's
tuck
really
them
smart.
inside.
I would absolutely say to do that. It's very smart to keep them out of the way. It helps you keep from getting things tangled. Mine are too big because my sample here is on bulky yarn, just so that you can see it.
Right.
And I didn't have bulky mini skeins. I just had these two that you could really tell apart for high contrast, which is what you want for being able to see it on camera.
Right.
Okay, so now we're here at my marker, and this is where I'm going to introduce my heel yarn. And I was reading this over today, looking at it. Oh, it's a good one. Okay, so I'm introducing this heel yarn over on the left. And what that does, because this is a slip stitch round, it
Mhm.
means that my left hand, which is going to be the weaker hand for almost everyone, is going to do the easy knit all rows. And then my right hand is going to do the technically slightly trickier slip stitch rows.
And I just want to remind people that at the top of this, Rue has us knitting backwards. And so this technique of knitting backwards is really handy for this pattern, for doing heel turns, and also for entrelac and other small,
Yes.
small pieces of back and forth knitting.
Yeah. Anything where you're doing small back and forth, if you're doing short rows, if you're doing entrelac, and I use it all the time for my heel flaps. It just makes a lot of sense to me to just.
And to be fair, if they were unable to do this, they could turn and purl.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
but this is a technique that is fun to learn and gives you a different arrow in your knitting quiver.
Right. And it's only for this little portion of the sock. We're not trying to do it for the whole sock. It's just learn the thing and master it and move on to something easier fairly quickly. Okay, so I'm just gonna knit all the way this way. So with the yarn tail here, I'm just going to knit starting at the marker, inside the marker, and then knit all my stitches with the first white yarn. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So I'm a picker, not a thrower. And I've been knitting ambidextrously since I was a kid.
Huh.
So many people have the thing where they were left-handed and they wanted to learn to knit, so they had to learn right-handed. And I did that, but I couldn't remember how to purl. I could knit with my right hand, but I couldn't remember how to purl. So instead of turning it around and purling back, when I got to the end of the row, I just switched hands and switched directions and went back the other way like this. So we're going to knit till there's 2 stitches before the marker on this side.
So there's nothing wrong with your screen. Rue is absolutely working from left to right instead of from right to left.
Only for right now, though. Okay. So we're going to knit to there, and then I'm just going to knit those 2 stitches together. Now, you're going to introduce, now you're going to introduce another white. I'm not going to use a white just so that you can tell the difference on the screen. If I wanted it to look like the one in the pattern, I would use two colors that are almost exactly the same, but I like to use like one that's a 4-ply and one that's a 2-ply so I can tell them apart.
Yeah.
But here on camera, I'm going to use a blue. It's just being a little recalcitrant and tangling at the moment. Okay, so now over on this side, just inside the marker, just like on the other side, so at the same place symmetrically, I'm going to introduce the blue.
Now, are you going to
Just
trap
inside
that
the
last
marker.
stitch? Oh, no, you're not.
Sorry,
Never mind.
it's okay. This column should be a slip,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm like, wait a second. Knit one, slip one, and knit one. So we're gonna move that one and stay with the same columns
Mm-hmm.
as we come across. So the blue is going in the furrows and I'm doing the white on top in the same.
So the pattern reads, this is row 2, heel row 2, marker, comma, and then the repeat is knit 1, slip 1.
Sorry, I skipped the little italics, the little details. I'm just gonna come back.
Okay.
The first class that we had, when I made a little mistake, that I was just kicking myself and kicking myself for not taking back and fixing it on camera. So I'm gonna do that right now. Okay, so here I've done that knit 2 together,
Mm-hmm.
right? At the end of the of heel row 1.
Mm-hmm.
I've done the knit 2 together. It says this is not knit the last hex with the first gusset stitch. So that's not what you're supposed to do. But every time you end up with the working yarn, you're going to slip the stitch with the working yarn before you do anything else.
Okay.
So it says in the italics, remove the marker.
Yes.
Slip the last stitch slip the last stitch worked with the working yarn to the right hand needle. So I'm going to remove the marker. I'm moving the last stitch worked. Here's the working yarn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting the marker back.
There we go.
Okay. Now we can start with the blue and we will not be contradicting our instructions. Right?
Right. And then you're starting in the right place with the first stitch being a knit 1 in the furrow.
Yes.
Perfect.
Right. So then I'm going to slip the white. And then I'm going to keep going in pattern. So the first one I know you have 2 whites. So the first one beyond the marker after having moved it is the knit one. And then I'm slip 1, knit 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in the instructions, it says knit 1, slip 1. This is the knit 1, slip 1. And we're just going to keep doing that. Sorry if I said it too many times. I was trying to be quite accurate. And you know that you're slipping the right ones if they're the same columns as before. So when we get to the other end, we're going to stop just like we did before 2 stitches before the marker, and we're going to knit those 2 together. Sorry. I think we want to slip knit them. No, we want to knit them together through the back loop. So this is one of the things that happens when you're knitting backwards, is that your stitches are mounted differently. So normally when I'm knitting along, my stitch would be mounted and I would make a movement like this.
Mhm.
But now that I've started knitting backwards, as I encounter them, all of my stitches are mounted this way, and I need to knit through the back loop. But since it's backward knitting, we don't really specify every single time.
Mhm.
We just assume that you're going to encounter stitches that are mounted backwards. So I've knit those 2 together, and now I'm going to take off that marker. I'm going to slide the stitch with the working yarn over onto the left-hand needle, replace the marker.
And now it's just a plain knit back
Right.
across, backward.
So we know we're going to knit the first stitch because we're going to knit all the stitches after the marker.
And again, if it's tricky for you to do a backwards knit, it's okay to turn and do a purl. The reason that Rue does the backwards knit is that she can maintain a tauter tension on the heel stitches. And we do want to have nice tight stitches here because that's going to help them wear better.
Yes. Okay, so the rule on every single row as we do these short rows is we're going to knit right up next to, but not on top of, the working yarn that we are knitting up next to. So with my yarn here, I'm going to knit this blue, this white, and this blue, but I'm not going to knit the stitch where the working yarn is coming from. I'm going to go right up next to it. Now, this is really detailed use of markers just to help you keep track. So I'm going to take off the marker. I'm going to move the stitch that has the working yarn coming from it onto this right-hand needle. I'm going to put the marker back. And that just helps me know how many stitches have been trapped, all the ones that are outside the marker.
And this is an excellent, it was such a nice way to keep track of which row you're on. If you look at each row, there are arrows that indicate the direction of the knitting.
Yeah.
So on your pattern, there are arrows that either point to the right or point to the left to tell you where which direction you should be knitting across the heel stitches. And then at the end, at the very end, it has in parentheses or in brackets how many trap stitches will be on each side as you finish that direction.
Yes, I find that it's really important to orientation. People are always asking me knitting questions on Facebook, and first I have to figure out where they are.
Right.
And honestly, this is the part where people lose track. They're like, I don't know how many ones I've trapped. How do I keep track? Well, use a little marker. And then if you don't keep going, your little marker falls off and you have to put it back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now to the right of that marker, there is a blue stitch and a white stitch. Those are 2 trapped stitches. They're on the other side of the marker. You're not going to work them until you're done with the heel.
Yes. Now I'm going to leave this working yarn here, the blue one. That was the second one that I added, and then pick up the other working yarn. So at the beginning of every row, you're gonna start out with 2 yarns that are lying next to each other like this. And you're always going to use the one on the outside and put it over the one on the inside. And not work this one. I'm not gonna do a stitch on top of it because it's already trapped. That means I'm not gonna be able to get to it to work it. So now to stay in pattern, I need to slip this one and knit this one. The important thing is that the same columns are always slipped. I've had more than one person tell me that the hardest thing about a sock, knitting a sock, is just keeping track of how many stitches you've already wrapped and then resolving the wraps. So I tried to solve both of those problems. Okay, so over here, we don't have a working yarn, but we have a stitch marker, so we're gonna knit right up to it. And that's why it's really important to move your marker every time. I'm gonna move the white one, put the marker back on, and then knit, switch directions. I'm just gonna knit them all.
So what I found when I was doing this is as you're alternating your first 2 colors of your heel point stitches, you're not switching colors the way that you did before. You're actually switching these colors every other row in those slip columns.
That is true. Yes.
So it makes a different pattern, which is really neat.
Yeah. It's all from the Progress Pride flag. I mean, the Progress Pride flag has that white triangle, and I wanted that triangle, that white triangle. So if you look at the sock from that angle, you get the triangle.
Yeah.
There it is. So that was just me being cutesy with the.
No, it looks great.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm gonna do a couple more rows, probably not as many as I would actually do, and then show you how to resolve these wraps.
Okay, and that's the really the last tricksy part of this pattern.
Yes.
Resolving the wraps. The traps, sorry. They are not wrap stitches, they are trap stitches.
Yes, because if you'll notice, we're just knitting a stitch and moving it to the side and leaving it. The thing about that is because we're picking up a different yarn and using that to knit the next stitch, we're not interrupting the tension of the fabric at all. Does that make sense?
Yep. You continue to do this until you have a sort of central number of stitches that remain. And for many of the sizes, it's 5 center stitches or 7, correct?
It's usually 5 or 7, yes. 3 can be excessively pointy. You may want more than 7 if you're knitting a very large sock.
Okay. So you continue to trap the stitches on the side until your both sides match, and there is a central 5 or 7 stitches.
Yes.
And then we resolve them, which is the next fun part.
Right. Now, if you don't like moving markers, you can, I tried writing the pattern with do this 6 stitches trapped on the left, and then I was just counting them all the time, and I thought if we just move the marker, it's just so easy to keep track of. You just knit up to the marker every time.
It absolutely saves time. My first experience with this was doing a Stephen West shawl. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It was a really cute pattern, but it worked with short rows, and it worked with short rows where you were approaching the marker. And you had to stop and turn 15 stitches before the marker, and I kept count, like, so I'd have 85 stitches, so I'd have to knit 60 and stop 15 stitches before them, and I was in the car and I was getting car sick from counting all the stitches. And what I finally realized is if I just dropped a marker in every time I turned 15 stitches from, that was the easiest place to count. It was only 15 stitches. And then the marker was exactly where I needed to make the next turn.
Yeah.
So dropping a marker, if you can keep track of your markers, if you can make a little note on your pattern, but keeping track of your markers makes all the difference in doing a pattern like this. I'm absolutely convinced.
I wish I could have had like 4 different full samples for this, so I could just be like, through the magic of television.
Or like a child. And here's one I prepared earlier.
Oh,
Just whisk it out of the oven and it's all ready to do the heel resolution. I know it is not so easy to do videos for knitting in 1 hour.
No, it is not. I'm like, I gotta hurry because we have more stuff we have to get to. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let me see my papers here so I can get very exact on guiding you through.
So it's on page 11, I think.
Thank you.
You'll have worked through all of these things. Sorry, page 10. 30,
Gotcha.
It's row 36 at the bottom of page 10.
Yes. Okay. So
You'll be on the right-hand side.
we want to finish. We'll be doing our last trap on the right, I believe.
So there will be 18 stitches or however many stitches, but there will be one more stitch on the right trapped when you're done with this.
Right.
And there's on the left.
Right. Correct. But we want to end up going that way because, you know, going back to knitting in the round in that direction is important.
Yes.
Oh, we're not going to make everybody go back to knitting in the round left-handed. Though you can if you want to. It's lots of fun.
That wasn't what this class was about.
No, not this class.
The next class.
Oh, goodness.
It
actually is really fun.
Our first little whispers of snow today. I mean, first we had a little snow actually earlier this year, but it's the first day that it felt really wintry.
Yeah. Okay, let me see. Right. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to resolve some traps on the left. That's the first side we do. And according to the pattern, exactly when you should do that is according to the pattern. But I want to have time to show you how to do it. So I need to share my top cam. Let's do that.
You have to switch
back. Got it. Hello.
There we go.
Okay. So here are my traps. You can see I have 4 of them on the left here. And I'm going to resolve them just like this.
or reach down and get the stitch below, bring it up, and then there's like a little tricky dance you can do. If you don't untwist the 2 stitches, the white will show up too much. If you do untwist them like that, then you knit 2 together and they will stack and the white won't show as much. Same thing as just gonna, here's my trapped stitch, it's the blue one.
Mhm.
I'm lifting up the white one onto the needle, disentangling them so they're next to each other, and then knitting the 2 together, just like that. There's the trapped stitch. I'm lifting up the blue, disentangling them, putting it back. So this is the stitch and this one is the trap.
So you're-
Knitting the 2
You're
together.
pulling the stitch from below and uncrossing it, I think is another maybe.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'm pulling this stitch up from below.
Mhm.
Get it? Where are you, you little bugger? There you are. I'm pulling it up from below and uncrossing it. Yes.
And then on that one, you're gonna work those 3 together with the first.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take these 2 together as a knit, as if I were knitting 2 together, and I'm gonna switch their direction, their facings, and
Mhm.
I'll put them back on over here, and then knit those 3 together. Did you see it? Want me to do it again?
Yes, so that on in the pattern, this one is at the final hex stitch, pick up the stitch below the final stitch,
Yep.
place it on the left-hand needle, slip both stitches together knitwise. If you're slipping them knitwise, and
Like
then
that.
knit 3 together with the first, I want to say gusset, the first wing stitch.
Yes. Okay. So this, here's the blue one. I'm
Mhm.
lifting up the white one from below,
Mhm,
putting it on there, uncrossing them
mhm.
using my thumbnail. Then I'm slipping the 2 together as if to knit, picking up the teal one, got all 3 there, and then I'm knitting those 3 together through the back loop.
So that works the last of the heel expansion stitches with the first of the wing stitches, and is essentially how we're going to be working each one of those wing stitches.
Yes.
Minus
There
the
won't be 3.
adjust for the
It'll
wrap.
just be
Yeah.
2.
It'll just be,
There won't be 3 stitches. It'll
there
just
won't
be
be
2.
3.
Okay. Where's my papers? Okay, so then we would work back in the other direction. The one that we just did the 3 together will slip. And we'll go back in the other direction. We're just gonna knit all of these.
Mhm.
The ones that are all resolved get knit. The center few don't need to be resolved, so they get knit. Now, my heel is going to be super shallow because I just only trapped 4 on each side for the
It's for show.
time saving purposes. Okay, so get over here to my traps. Okay, and remember, I'm going to go all the way to the marker before I encounter my traps. That's how I know which ones. So, I think I'm
All right.
getting a little dye on my finger.
Mm.
Okay, so now over here, let me make sure I get. Okay, so the stitch is blue. The one beneath it is blue. I'm lifting it up. I'm uncrossing it, and then I'm knitting those 2 together.
Mhm.
Stitch is white. The one below it is blue. lifting it up, uncrossing it, knitting those two together. And I do snug that up quite tightly when I do that. Last. This one is not quite the last one. The next one is the last one. So knit those two together. Snug that up. This is loose because this is the tail of the blue where I introduced it. So just snug that up, make it nice and small as a stitch. Then the last hex stitch and lifting up the one from underneath, uncrossing them. You can do that with the tip of your needle or your thumbnail. And then I'm going to, because they're through the back loop, knit all three of those together. Just like that.
Ta-da!
So you can see that the one from the hex is on top and the one from the wing is underneath of it. And we want to do that every time. We want the wing to slide underneath.
Okay.
Heel expansion. So at that point, I'm not going to use a marker on that side anymore. I'm going to be able to keep track. But if you need to, you can keep a marker there to keep track.
And you may be switching colors here, but you're only working with one color at a time in the heel stitches, correct?
Yes, one color at a time. And then we have our white is not where we can reach it, right? So we're on gusset stitch. I was just trying to orient myself to because in the pattern it's two whites.
So this is your speckled white.
Yes, and we're just going to.
Sorry, this is your angel
those have
white.
all been knit. We're gonna slip one.
I'm
knit
sorry,
one.
this is angel white,
Yes,
which is the first one.
I should be able to start with a slip one, knit one. The first slip should be the one we just knit three together, and then knit one, slip one, and that should keep you in pattern.
So this is row 38. Going from right to left again. And this is the top of page 11.
And we don't need to pick up that that white because we're not going to use it anymore.
Right. So you can trim it if you want to.
Right. So I'm just going to go to the other edge and then to over here, and then we'll begin at this point in the pattern on row 39. We introduce the pink for the stripes. But all we do is work in slip stitch back and forth with working backwards. There's no more short rows. There's no more traps or wraps. There's just the knit two together and the slip knit on the edge of the heel flap as we work up the heel flap, and there's just those broad solid color stripes.
So show the finished sock.
Yeah.
And how that looks when it's all done.
So what we just did just now was the white, and this edge right there, you can just barely see right in here. And there's no openings at all. Even if I stretch it open, you can see it's a really solid fabric. From doing the traps instead of wraps. There's no gaps at all. So this last white right here is where we resolved our traps, and then we introduce the pink and we knit back and forth. Here's our slip knits. Here are our knit two togethers. And the way to keep these very neat is to use a knit two together on this side and then a slip, knit 2 together through the back loop on this side.
Mhm.
Um,
And it's really
And-
pretty.
the same columns all the way up, and in the pride flag.
And then when you get all the way to the top of the wing stitches, you've resumed the correct number of stitches that you started with.
Yes.
You've
from
returned to the
here to
same number that
here.
you.
These are the wing stitches,
Mhm.
and you can see from starting here at the white, up here at the purple, the wing stitches disappear into or eaten up by the heel flap stitches.
And so at the top of that, you resume your color work, and your color work is waiting for you to continue in the same stripe that you were in. And you can continue as far up as you want to go. But in this case, Rue's sock is a short sock. My sock was a little bit longer.
I like your taller sock.
Mhm.
Here's the inside. You see everything
It's
is
really beautifully done.
smooth.
And then we talked about the finishing of like running the yarns up the base of the sock.
Yes, this is all reinforced on the whole inside, all those ends that you have to weave in anyway. If you weave them in this way, it reinforces the whole thing, and they'll sort of felt together and just make a really smooth layer. 2 things. I only run the yarn up the sock, never across, so that
Okay.
it never interferes with any stretchiness. And I do stretch the sock as I am running the yarn, and then do leave like almost a half an inch of yarn there on the inside so it doesn't poke through to the outside and just be a little messy.
You have it's such a clever pattern and such a clever design. It's really been such a pleasure to work through this with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
It's so gorgeous, and I'm really looking forward to getting my second one done because it's going to be a Christmas present.
And they are going to be so cozy.
They are going to be so cozy. Okay,
Yeah.
unpin, unspotlight.
Yeah.
If you want to. There you go.
It turned into a shorty sock because I was really wanted to do them for Pride,
Mhm.
but they are really, with the sturdiness of them, they are wonderful boot socks.
They're so warm. And we've tried this one on, and people have said it feels like a slipper. It's so thick, it feels like a slipper.
That Sweet Georgia tough sock is delicious.
It's really
It's tough.
It's such a sturdy yarn. And mine went up. I finished all of the colors of my 13 total.
You did?
I did. And so the top part of it is there's a turning ridge of 2 purl rows, and then you work just in plain stockinette on much smaller needles to have an interior part that will fold in, and then you'll just stitch that down. So it's pretty straightforward. This is the end of Sock Club for 2023, and it was such a pleasure to have you with us and to work through the Proudfoot sock with you. Thank you, Rue, very, very much. And I hope that everybody is really enjoying the Proudfoot sock, because I am, and it's been really informative, and I've learned so many different ways of working with socks from working with you. Thank you so much again.
I'm so glad that you've enjoyed it. It's a passion, something that I'm just absolutely in love with, that I really just got into solving problems.
Mm-hmm.
and really can't stop doing it. I'm completely addicted to knitting socks.
I can't wait to finish these, and I'm going to start another pair so that I have 2. So I've really cemented my skills.
Yeah. Well, let's do the EOP socks next time.
Okay, that sounds
because they're even stretchier and yummier.
okay. That sounds
okay.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your
Thank you for
evening.
having me.
You're very welcome. And we'll be in touch.
Good.
Okay.
Have a great one.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.